Hello, welcome to yet another episode of Little Modular. Today we will be having fun with this incredible module by LIVESTOCK Electronics called Maze. If you have watched my previous reviews, you have probably seen the Bang review, and if you have not, then I strongly encourage you to go back and find that. Bang was a debut module by LIVESTOCK Electronics. It was an excellent source of digital wave shaping sounds, really unique stuff. And Maze is kept in that vein of adventurous and special modules, although it does not produce a sound by itself. Yet, it's one of the coolest modules that I have acquired lately. First of all, the looks of it. I'm totally in love with this crazy design. It's just like a candy. All those sleds, different colors, animations. It's just lovely. It's kind of like a modular fairy tale to me, and I just love the aesthetics that Daniel is using on those modules. Second thing, I totally adore this kind of modules, meaning simple concept that could elevate your patches and your music to the next level with no time. And that precisely is the case with Maze. It is a matrix switcher router, meaning that you have 4 inputs right here, you can see, and 4 outputs in here. And you can route those inputs to outputs in any combination you can imagine, and then you can store those individual arrangements under presets, and you can switch between those presets either manually or by CV signal, and actually by different kinds of CV signals. So the concept is super simple if you think about it, but if you take into account the fact that it can work with audio signals and CV signals simultaneously, and that it could mix those signals or multiply them and send them all over your system, it becomes vastly powerful thing. So be my guest and let me show you around the whole thing. As you can see, the layout is really simple here. The main thing being the matrix of push buttons 4x4. They are illuminated, and those illuminations show you different things depending on the mode you're in. And then you have a push encoder. Most of the times you will be using this function and knob to navigate most of the functions of this module. And you have basic 2 modes that you will be operating in, and you switch between those modes with the function button right here. The first default mode is the save mode. You can see those animated dots right here. That's where you switch your presets. So each of those buttons holds a different routing configuration. So for instance, here I have a silent preset, meaning that I'm not routing any inputs to any outputs. But here I have one arrangement, here I have another arrangement, and here I have another arrangement. Okay? I have 16 presets that are stored in 6 banks. So it's 6 times 16 presets. You switch the banks by going into the settings mode, which I'll show later. But first, let's go to the second most important mode, which is a routing mode. If you press the function button again, you go into the routing, which is indicated by this animated arrow going up and down. And now the matrix changes into the inputs and outputs, which you can configure. The rows represent inputs and the columns represent outputs. So I have 4 different sources connected to the inputs. Input number 1 is the aforementioned Bang oscillator. Input number 2 is organ accumulator. Then on input number 3 I have the DPO, and input number 4 is drums by hex inverter. And I'm routing those inputs to 4 different processors. First one being right here is the lovely multi-dimension module by Feedback Modules that I will be reviewing really soon. The second one is totally bonkers filter by Analog that I'm also be reviewing really soon. The third one is the new second version of ZDSP processor by TipTop, and this one is loaded with Valhalla verbs. And the fourth processor, which is off the screen, is Plankton Electronics Jellyfish Delay. So now I can route those different sources to different effects. So let's go back to the save mode, choose an empty preset, and then we go back to the routing mode. And now let's say I would like to send my first input, which is bank, to reverb, which is ZDSP. So I would choose the first raw and go to the third column, press the button, and then when I adjust the encoder, I'm adjusting the gain of the signal. If I press and turn, I can go in bigger increments of 10. Okay? If I like the arrangement, I can just press the function button again, and this is saved. So if I go back to the save mode, and now I choose this preset again, you can hear that it's saved with the routing I just made. Now let's say I would like to route those three remaining inputs to the same reverb. So I can just choose all three of them in the routing mode, and I can just adjust them simultaneously. Okay? So you can see that the LED color is changing, indicating the strength of the signal. Now, right now I'm in the audio mode, but you can also change the behavior of the knob so it acts as a CV attenuator. You need to go to settings in order to do that, and you can just configure each of the outputs for a proper behavior. But more on that later. Now, the cool thing is that I can also copy those different arrangements, and I do that by going into the third mode, which is the preview mode. If you hold the mute and function, you go into the preview mode indicated by this pulsating eye, and now you can see, if you press each of the presets, what is the routing of those presets. So this could be really useful, especially in live situations when you're lost. If you just press the preset, you can see what are the arrangements, but you can also copy and paste them between each other, which is really useful. For instance, I have this silent preset right here, and I would like to copy this over the first preset. So the first preset is silent now. So I just press this button, hold it, and press first preset. Now, if we go out of this mode and I press the first preset on the save mode, it's silent because I've just copied it. See, the other ones are holding some routings, but the first one is just silent. Now, another cool mode is the mute mode. If you press mute right here, you can mute specific routings within a preset, which could be also really cool while, for instance, improvising during a live set. Now, let's say that you would like to unmute them at once. Nothing simpler, just press the encoder and it all goes back. Now, one more cool thing about the mute button is that it allows you to undo your last action. So for instance, if I choose this routing and I want to go back to the previous one, I just press mute and it's undone. Okay? Another really cool feature of this is that you can morph between the presets with a specific rate, and you set this rate by going into the routing mode and not choosing anything here. If you twist the knob, you will twist the rate of the morphing. So now it's 0, 0. If I go back to my save mode and now I switch between the presets, you can hear that it's happening instantly. Now, if we go back to the routing mode, not choose anything, and let's say choose the maximum one, and go back to the save mode, and you can hear that it is fading in and out in a very elegant way. Okay? So this is super useful. But where fun really begins is when you animate the whole routings and presets with external CV in. And you can use a continuous CV, like a CV from LFOs or envelopes. You can also use triggers to step between the presets. And you can have different arrangements of this preset sequencing. You can even have a Euclidean sequencer in here or some random option. And you access the CV settings by going into the settings of the module. And you do that by pressing and holding the function. And now we are in this settings mode. So the first thing right here is switching the banks. You can see that each bank has its own LED color, but you also get this information at the top of the module at the screen. It shows you which bank you're in. And this is where you choose the kind of sequencing you would like to use for choosing the preset. So let's choose trigger as the first one. And if we go back to our save mode, I can set it up so it's, for instance, 8 steps. And if I push and twist, then I can choose what's the starting point of the sequence. Okay? So it's sort of like an offset. So you can see it goes back and starts from this step right here. So again, I can change number of steps, as you can see. Or I can change the starting point. Okay. If I go back to functions and choose, let's say, a random mode, I can choose some randomness with it. So lots of fun. And there's also the Euclidean mode. It's also number of steps and the number of active steps that goes into the sequence. So as you can see, it's a tons of fun, and I have really just scratched the surface of this module, because until now we have been only using it with audio signals. Imagine what will happen if I'll input some different triggers, sequences, or clocks into the inputs, and I distribute those to different drum modules. How about that? Or how about feeding it with different LFOs and envelopes and feeding those to different places in your system and just juggling around with the presets? It's just mind-boggling. For now, it's enough. I will show you the other CV side of this module in the next video. Stay tuned.